Black CEO's bag got kicked 3 minutes later. The attendant's career took off, in reverse. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The suitcase hit the floor before the room could even breathe. Silk shirts, papers, and sketches scattered like confetti of humiliation. Know your place. The flight attendant's voice cracked through the first-class cabin like thunder on metal. Gasps. Phones rose. The soft hum of luxury turned into static. Dr. Naomi Carter didn't move. White suit, calm eyes, stillness sharper than anger. She looked down at the mess, a tangle of fabrics and flight plans, then back up at the woman who'd kicked her bag open. "Ma'am," the attendant sneered, "this section is for real passengers." Naomi's voice stayed quiet. "I am one." Laughter flickered from the row behind her. Someone whispered, "She doesn't look first class." The attendant stepped closer, the red scarf at her neck trembling with rage. "I said back to coach now." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "You just kicked the wrong suitcase." A security officer stepped into the aisle, unsure whether to intervene. The cabin pulsed with the low hum of recording phones. One passenger muttered, "She's filming this, man. This is gonna blow up." Naomi bent slowly, gathering her scattered papers, each stamped with the logo Aerolux Holdings. The attendant noticed, blinked, then doubled down. "Fake logos don't buy you respect," she hissed. Naomi's eyes lifted calm, precise. "Neither do uniforms," she said. For a heartbeat, the plane froze. The air itself seemed to realize what had just been said. Then a voice from the back. "She's serious? She just kicked her bag open?" Another whispered, "That's assault." The security officer looked uneasy. "Ma'am, please, let's stay calm." Naomi straightened, smoothing her sleeve. "I am calm," she said. "You should be too." The attendant folded her arms. "Don't test me." Naomi met her chaza. "No need. You've already failed." The officer hesitated. Cameras kept rolling. Power shifted subtle, invisible, undeniable. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Naomi Carter. 3 hours earlier, the terminal had been quiet. Dr. Naomi Carter walked through Gate B14 alone, no assistants, no bodyguards, no entourage, just a cream-white carry-on and a silence that could make people nervous. She wasn't traveling for comfort. She was auditing her own airline. For weeks, complaints had been stacking up. Passengers of color denied upgrades, told they didn't look premium, their names erased from first-class logs. PR called them isolated incidents. Naomi called them symptoms. So today, she dressed down. Plain linen blouse, no makeup, no jewelry, hair tied back. A deliberate invisibility. She wanted to see how her company treated people who didn't look powerful. At the check-in counter, the clerk barely looked up. "Basic economy?" he asked. Naomi smiled faintly. "Seat 2 amperes? First class." The pause that followed said everything. She scanned her boarding pass herself. Green light. No question. The system recognized her even if the humans didn't, and that was exactly the test. Inside the cabin, the world looked expensive champagne, whispering leather seats, the curated calm of corporate success. She'd built this. Every chair, every policy, every staff member's paycheck, they existed because of her signature. And yet, she'd seen that same look before. At 23, she was turned away from a luxury lounge she'd designed for a client, told deliveries use the back door. At 31, an investor mistook her for catering staff during a board dinner. Now 42, she was about to witness how much or how little had changed. As she settled into 2 amperes, a voice beside her whispered, "Ma'am, that seat's reserved for premium travelers." Naomi looked up at the woman in the Navy uniform, her name tag flashing Clara. "Then you're looking at one," she replied softly. Clara didn't check the manifest. She just smirked. "Let's not make this difficult." Naomi folded her hands, serene. "You already did." Somewhere near the galley, a trainee flight attendant named Mia froze mid-step. She'd seen Naomi's name during the morning briefing, but the rest of the crew hadn't noticed. Her pulse raced. Should she speak? Should she stay quiet? She didn't know it yet, but within minutes, silence itself would become the loudest evidence in the room. The engines hummed low, a velvet sound beneath the tension. Clara hovered by Naomi's seat, hands on her hips, red nails flashing like warning lights. "I'm not repeating myself," she snapped. "Move to economy before boarding completes." Naomi didn't look up from her tablet. "I paid for this seat. It's mine." Clara let out a dry laugh. "You people always have a story." That phrase "you people" cut through the air sharper than turbulence. A man 2 rows back lowered his champagne flute. Another turned on his camera. Naomi exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that sounded like patience being tested for the last time. "Run my name," she said quietly. Clara's jaw tightened. "I don't take orders from passengers." From the galley, Mia hesitated, holding a stack of napkins that trembled slightly in her hands. She remembered the morning manifest again, Dr. Naomi Carter, Aerolux Holdings Board. Her stomach dropped. She knew exactly who was sitting in 2 amperes. "Clara," Mia began softly, "maybe you should—" But Clara cut her off with a glare. "Trainees don't give directions." Naomi's gaze lifted, slow and surgical. "Is this your training style?" she asked. Clara's lips curved into a smirk. "My training taught me to spot frauds." The word hung in the air. Fraud. Passengers shifted. Someone whispered, "She's serious?" Another murmured, "She can sue for that." The security officer, same one from the gate, stepped into the cabin again. "What's going on?" he asked, eyes darting between the 2 women. Clara gestured at Naomi. "Unauthorized passenger, possibly using a fake ID." He frowned. "You verified that?" She refused to cooperate. Naomi's tone didn't rise. It descended, calm but dangerous. "You should double-check before you touch my things again." Clara crossed her arms, forcing a laugh. "Oh, I've seen this act before. Flashy bag, fake logo, big attitude. Same story every time." Naomi leaned back in her seat. "Then, maybe this time, the ending's different." The tension thickened, the cabin's air recycling the scent of fear and ego. Phones recorded quietly. A teenage passenger whispered, "She's gonna regret this." Mia stood frozen near the galley door. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. She knew a storm was building, not the kind that shakes planes, but the kind that ends careers. And somewhere deep inside Naomi's calm eyes, the storm had already begun. Clara's patience snapped first. She crouched down, grabbed Naomi's carry-on, and yanked it toward the aisle. The wheels screeched against the floor. Documents fluttered, flight contracts, route charts, embossed letters marked confidential, Aerolux Holdings. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Someone whispered, "She's actually doing it." Another voice closer. "Is she out of her mind?" Clara's voice rose above the hum. "I warned you. You can't just walk in here pretending to be—" The sentence cut off. Her eyes landed on one page, a board letter with Naomi's printed signature. Still, she laughed. "Nice try. I've seen better Photoshop." Naomi didn't flinch. She slowly reached for a single paper that had drifted near her shoe, folded it once, and slid it back into the case. "Be careful," she said softly. "You're touching more than my luggage." The words weren't loud, but the way she said them, low, exact, deliberate, made even the air marshal pause. Clara smirked, trying to reclaim control. "Oh, please, what are you going to do? Call your boyfriend to complain?" Naomi looked up, her gaze steady as glass. "No," she said. "I don't raise my voice. I raise consequences." A murmur spread. Phones zoomed in. One passenger whispered, "Did she just say that?" Another mouthed, "This is going viral." Mia stepped forward from the galley, trembling. "Clara, stop," she pleaded. "You don't understand who—" "Enough!" Clara shouted. "Security! Escort her out!" The officer hesitated. "Are you sure, ma'am?" "Now," Clara barked, pointing toward Naomi. The cabin fell dead silent. Naomi stood, calm, slow, composed. The light from the window brushed her white suit like it had been waiting for this moment. She met the officer's eyes. "You might want to check your roster before you make that mistake." He froze. Clara's confidence cracked a flicker of doubt in her eyes. "What roster?" she asked. Naomi stepped closer, her voice just above a whisper. "The one that says who owns this plane." The words hit harder than any shout could. Somewhere, a passenger muttered, "Oh my God, And in that quiet, every camera kept rolling because everyone sensed it. Justice was about to board. The cabin didn't breathe. For a full second, even the engines sounded quieter. as if the aircraft itself was waiting to hear what came next. Naomi reached down, lifted her case from the floor, and placed it gently on the seat beside her. Her every movement was deliberate, the choreography of someone who never rushes, because power never needs to. Clara's voice cracked. "What are you talking about? You don't—" Naomi opened the folder in her hand and turned a page toward the security officer. A company letterhead glimmered under the cabin light. Aerolux Holdings Board Authorization. Below it, in ink, her own name, Dr. Naomi J. Carter, Chief Executive Officer. The officer's expression collapsed into realization. He straightened instantly, voice unsteady. "Ma'am, I didn't know." Naomi nodded once. "Now you do." A murmur spread like a wave through the rows. Passengers exchanged looks, half shock, half satisfaction. Mia's eyes filled with tears she didn't expect. Clara took a step back. This can't be right. You're lying." Naomi tilted her head slightly. "You think a liar makes it to 40,000 feet in her own aircraft?" Her tone never changed, yet the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The security officer cleared his throat. "Doctor Carter, Naomi's gaze stayed on Clara. "No, she should." She gestured toward the intercom panel. Clara blinked. "Should what?" Naomi's voice was surgical. "Announce who you just assaulted." The silence was thick enough to touch. Passengers waited. Cameras rolled. Clara's face burned red, then pale. Her voice trembled into the mic. "Attention, passengers. I apologize for the disruption. Dr. Naomi Carter, CEO of Aerolux, is on board." A ripple of gasps, then applause. Someone said, "She owns the airline?" Another, "That's poetic justice right there." Naomi remained still, hands folded. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply looked out the window, city lights far below reflecting in her eyes like small constellations of calm authority. Then, finally, she spoke not to humiliate, but to end the lesson. "You don't measure class by the color of a suit or the skin that wears it." She looked at Clara once more. "You measure it by character, and yours just failed inspection." Mia lowered her gaze, whispering, "Yes, ma'am," as if learning more in that moment than any training could teach. Outside, the clouds parted, sunlight spilling across the wing. Inside, the world had shifted. And somewhere between altitude and apology, Clara realized what falling felt like, long before the plane ever landed. Applause still rippled through the cabin, fading slowly into the hum of the engines. Naomi didn't move. She waited long enough for silence to settle back, long enough for everyone to remember what respect was supposed to sound like. Clara stood frozen by the galley, clutching her scarf as if it might hold her job together. Her lips parted, searching for words that wouldn't come. I didn't know. I thought—" Naomi turned her head just slightly. "You thought wrong." Her tone wasn't cruel, it was clinical, the kind that cut without bleeding. Mia stepped forward cautiously. "Dr. Carter, should I call the captain?" Naomi shook her head. "No, this stays here. We handle it professionally." She reached for her phone, unlocked it with a quick glance, and tapped a single contact. A low beep echoed before a woman's voice answered. "Yes, Dr. Carter?" "Rachel, log an incident report. Flight 208, first-class cabin. File it under personnel misconduct. Effective immediately. Suspend crew member Clara Winslow pending termination review." The entire row of passengers stared, not sure whether to breathe or applaud again. Naomi's tone didn't rise, didn't change. "Ensure HR receives the footage being recorded right now. Full transparency." "Yes, ma'am," Rachel replied through the speaker. Clara's knees seemed to soften. "Please, Dr. Carter, I didn't mean—" Naomi looked at her not with anger, but finality. "You meant every word until it cost you something." The silence that followed was heavier than shouting. Even the air marshal bowed his head, muttering, "Understood, ma'am." Naomi finally sat back down, closing her folder. She spoke softly, but her words filled the cabin. "Next time, remember, every passenger carries more than luggage. Some carry the power to change your future." She turned to Mia. "Thank you for speaking up." Mia's voice shook. "I almost didn't." "That's how injustice wins," Naomi said. "Almost." The plane steadied in smooth air. Outside, clouds opened like curtains, revealing a clean horizon. Inside, the lesson lingered heavier than gravity, quieter than guilt. Naomi pulled out her notebook, jotting something down in neat, even lines. At the top of the page, New policy mandatory equity training for flight staff. Then she looked out the window, her reflection fading into the sky. Calm, composed, untouchable. For everyone else, it was just another flight. For Clara, it was the day she learned what falling felt like without ever leaving the ground. The cabin dimmed as the lights softened for cruising altitude. Most passengers sank into their seats, scrolling phones or pretending not to stare. But Naomi sat still, her gaze fixed on the slow dance of clouds outside. The hum of the engine faded into something else, a memory. She was 16 again, standing at a hotel lobby in Charlotte, clutching a resume she'd printed at the public library. The manager, a tall man in a blue suit, never looked at the paper, only at her skin. "We don't take walk-ins," he'd said, glancing past her to the next applicant. The next one was white. He smiled at her, invited her in. Naomi had walked out into the summer heat, heartbeat louder than the traffic. She remembered thinking, maybe if I speak softer, maybe if I smile more. Years later, she realized no tone would ever be soft enough for people who only listened to color. The memory shifted again, 23, consulting for a luxury developer. She'd designed an entire lobby, marble staircase and all. When she arrived for the opening, a valet handed her keys and said, "Deliveries go around back." She handed the keys back, smiled politely, and attended the ceremony as the architect no one saw coming. Now, 42,000 feet above the earth, those moments felt both distant and close. They had shaped the rhythm of her silence, not weakness, but control. Every time someone underestimated her, she learned to weaponize stillness. Mia passed by quietly, setting a cup of tea on Naomi's table. "Chamomile," she said softly. "It helps calm the nerves." Naomi's eyes warmed for the first time that day. "Thank you, Mia, but my nerves have been calm for years." Mia hesitated, then whispered, "I just wanted to say, what you did, it changes things." Naomi smiled faintly. "Then let's make sure it doesn't end here." Outside, the horizon burned gold sunlight cutting through a band of violet storm clouds, the kind of view that reminded her how far she'd come and how much further there was to go. She reached into her notebook again, writing beneath her earlier note, "Leadership isn't about being seen, it's about seeing." Ugh. The plane trembled slightly, a bump of air, gone in seconds. Naomi didn't flinch. She'd survived worse turbulence. And somewhere between the thunder of memory and the quiet of altitude, she decided, this story wouldn't end with punishment. It would end with change. Morning sunlight streaked through the cabin as Flight 208 descended toward Chicago. The storm of whispers had calmed, leaving behind only the quiet hum of respect. Naomi's phone vibrated once, a message from Rachel, her chief operations officer. "Incident logged. Crew ID verified. HR and legal on standby. Do you wish to make it public?" She stared at the words for a moment, then typed back, "No, not public. Systemic." The difference mattered. Firing one employee didn't fix the culture that trained her to think arrogance was authority. Naomi knew that. She'd built empires and she'd dismantled a few too. She opened her tablet and began drafting a directive to her executive board. Each line carried the precision of a verdict. Effective immediately. Mandatory equity and empathy training for all flight and ground staff. All promotion reviews to include behavioral evaluation, not just performance. Customer complaint system revised for anonymous escalation. She paused, then added one more sentence. Professionalism begins where prejudice ends. The words glowed against the screen like quiet fire. Across the aisle, Mia pretended to tidy the drink cart, sneaking glances toward Naomi. When their eyes met, Naomi gestured her closer. "Mia," she said gently, "I'll need your testimony in the report." Mia nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am. I thank you for not ignoring what happened." Naomi smiled faintly. "Change doesn't start with noise. It starts with witnesses." The captain's voice crackled through the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent. Local time is 9:42 a.m. On behalf of Aerolux, thank you for flying with us." Naomi closed her folder, slipped her pen inside, and looked out the window. Chicago glimmered beneath a haze of gold, her city, her headquarters, her next meeting. She could already picture the boardroom, 12 men, 1 woman, too many blind spots. And tomorrow, they would all hear about Flight 208. Because leadership wasn't about who flew first class. It was about who made sure no one ever got kicked out of it again. She exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that sounds like resolve. Somewhere behind her, a passenger whispered, "That woman changed everything without raising her voice." Naomi didn't turn around. She didn't need to. She'd already begun writing the new altitude of respect. The wheels touched down with a low thud, smooth, decisive, like a signature across a contract. Naomi didn't clap, didn't exhale. She'd never needed to. Justice had already landed. The moment the plane reached the gate, her phone buzzed again. "Rachel. HR, PR, and legal are waiting on level 38. Media sniffing around. Want me to stall them?" Naomi typed back, "No, let them wait. We'll speak once, with clarity." She rose from her seat. Passengers watched her quietly, some nodding in silent respect. Mia stood by the door, eyes wide. Naomi placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Finish your training," she said. "Then come see me in Chicago headquarters. We need people who remember what integrity feels like." Mia nodded, her voice trembling. "Yes, Dr. Carter." Naomi stepped into the jet bridge, white suit immaculate despite the storm it had endured. The air inside the terminal smelled of coffee, recycled air, and business. Her domain. By the time she entered the conference room on the 38th floor, the executives were already seated, suits crisp, expressions cautious. Rachel stood by the screen, folders in hand. "We've reviewed the footage. It's already circulating internally." Naomi nodded once. "Good. Transparency's faster than spin." A senior VP leaned forward. "Should we prepare a public apology? Maybe a press statement distancing the company?" Naomi raised a hand. The man stopped mid-sentence. "This isn't about distance," she said. "It's about direction." She walked to the head of the table. On the screen behind her, a still image from Flight 208 froze mid-action Clara's foot against the fallen suitcase. "This," Naomi said, "is what unchecked bias looks like at 30,000 feet." Silence. Not one executive shifted. Naomi continued, voice calm, cutting through the room like clear glass. "It's not our first scandal, but it will be our last ignored one." Rachel spoke quietly. "You're implementing the equity directive immediately?" Naomi nodded. "Company-wide, and I'll brief the press myself." The CFO frowned. "Won't that expose the brand to risk?" Naomi turned to him. "Accountability isn't risk, it's repair." The words lingered long after she finished speaking. No one argued. No one dared. Outside, the city sprawled under sunlight towers gleaming like runways. Naomi looked down from the window, the reflection of the skyline in her eyes. For the first time that morning, she allowed herself a quiet smile. The company would survive, but it would never fly the same way again. The press room inside Aerolux headquarters was a sea of lights and murmurs. Microphones lined the table. Cameras blinked like restless eyes. A dozen journalists whispered the same question. Would she show up herself? Then the door opened. Naomi Carter stepped in white suit, calm stride, no entourage. Her presence alone quieted the room faster than any command could. Rachel adjusted the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Naomi Carter, Chief Executive Officer of Aerolux Holdings." A storm of flashes erupted. Naomi didn't blink. She stood behind the podium, hands resting lightly on its edge, and let the noise die on its own. When the silence finally arrived, she began her tone low, steady, exact. "Yesterday on Flight 208, a member of our staff acted in a way that violates not just company policy, but human decency." She paused. "I was there." Gasps spread across the room. She continued, "I was the passenger." The cameras surged forward. Reporters leaned in. Naomi's gaze didn't waver. "I experienced firsthand what many of our customers have described the quiet cruelty of assumption, and I won't let it repeat." She tapped the microphone once, the sound echoing like a heartbeat. "Accountability isn't about revenge, it's about repair. We are implementing a new program across every division: training, evaluation, culture, leadership, all built around a single promise: dignity at every altitude." A journalist in the front row raised a hand. "Dr. Carter, will the employee be publicly named or fired?" Naomi shook her head. "She's already been removed from duty, but this story isn't about one person. It's about a pattern, and I'm here to end the pattern." Another reporter called out, "How do you respond to critics who say this incident shows systemic failure under your leadership?" Naomi looked directly into the lens of the central camera. "It does show failure," she said. "And that's why leadership exists, to face failure head-on, not hide behind it." A hush fell over the room. Her voice softened but carried farther. I founded this company to prove that professionalism has no color and respect needs no uniform. Yesterday, I was reminded there's still work to do. So we'll do it. Quietly, consistently, completely. She stepped back from the podium. No slogans, no applause, just truth. As she walked off stage, the flashes started again, not hungry this time, but reverent. One reporter whispered, "She didn't give us a headline. She gave us a lesson." And for Naomi Carter, that was enough. Because justice, when done right, never needed to shout. By sunrise the next day, Flight 208 had become more than a flight number. It was a mirror. Clips of the confrontation flooded social media. Clara's shout, Naomi's calm reply, the single line that silenced the cabin. "You just kicked the wrong suitcase." Hashtags trended across platforms. Number quiet power, number Aerolux truth, number justice in white. Some praised her composure, others debated whether she should have revealed herself sooner, but nearly everyone agreed on one thing. She never raised her voice, and still the world listened. In Detroit, a high school teacher played the clip for her students, saying, "Watch what leadership looks like." In Lagos, a pilot trainee posted, "She made me believe I belong in this uniform." And in the Aerolux employee group chat, a message from a junior flight attendant appeared. "Training or not, I'll never look at a passenger the same way again." Inside headquarters, emails poured in. Some were apologies, some thank yous, many confessions from staff admitting moments they'd stayed silent when they shouldn't have. Naomi read them all, not with pride, but with purpose. Rachel entered her office, holding a tablet filled with reports. "Customer satisfaction up 40% overnight," she said, "and recruiting inquiries have tripled." Naomi smiled faintly. "Reputation heals fast. Culture takes longer." On her desk lay the same white folder from the flight, its edges slightly bent, like proof that elegance can survive turbulence. She opened it, glanced at the policy draft, then reached for a pen. At the bottom, she wrote one final line. "Power isn't how loud you speak. It's how deeply you change the room." Down in the lobby, a new sign had been installed overnight, her order, quietly executed. Aerolux, dignity takes flight. As employees walked by, some paused to take photos, others just smiled. Mia, now in her new trainee uniform, passed beneath it, straightened her badge, and whispered, "Thank you, Dr. Carter." On the top floor, Naomi watched from the window. Below her, planes lifted one by one into the morning sky, white tails against a rising Sunday. She thought about the ripple she'd started, one act of calm defiance that became a wave of reform. No press release could capture that. No headline could measure it. But she could feel it steady, spreading, unstoppable. Because true power doesn't echo. It expands. Night had fallen over Chicago. The city shimmered in gold and silver beneath her office window, a constellation of ambition she once dreamed of reaching. Now she stood above it, not as a symbol, but as a steward. The lights inside her office were dim. Only the soft glow from her desk lamp traced the outline of her face, calm, thoughtful, unshaken. The folder from Flight 208 lay closed at last. Next to it, a fresh one labeled, Equity Implementation Phase 1. Naomi poured herself a cup of tea, chamomile again, the same kind Mia had offered at 30,000 feet. The first sip was quiet, grounding. It tasted like closure. On the far wall, a photo hung her younger self, standing in front of Aerolux's first hangar. Back then, she was just another woman in a borrowed blazer, holding blueprints no one took seriously. Now those same blueprints had become aircrafts that carried millions. And one flight, one moment had reminded her why she started. Her phone buzzed once. A message from Mia. "Just finished first solo route. A passenger thanked me for being kind. I told them it's company policy now." Naomi smiled. It wasn't pride, it was peace. Because justice, she knew, didn't need applause. It just needed continuity. She walked toward the glass, looking out at the blinking lights on the runway below. Each departure, each landing, a pulse of progress. Each aircraft, a moving declaration. Dignity takes flight. Her reflection stared back, white suit, stillness, purpose. She thought of her mother's words, whispered decades ago in a small kitchen in North Carolina. "When they try to silence you, don't shout. Stand so tall they can't ignore you." Tonight, she had done just that. And in doing so, she had given a generation permission to rise quietly, unapologetically, and free. Naomi placed the empty cup on the table, then opened her journal for the last entry of the day. She wrote, "Justice doesn't need noise, just power." Then she signed her name, closed the notebook, and exhaled a long, steady breath that sounded almost like grace. Outside, another plane lifted into the night sky, silver wings cutting through darkness. For a moment, Naomi followed it with her eyes until it vanished into the clouds. And in that silence, the world seemed to whisper back the truth she'd spent a lifetime proving. Power speaks loudest when it doesn't have to speak at all.